This week on the program, Brad Keselowski delivers a win for Ford and himself. Finally, we talk to Ryan Vargas, and fans are climbing the fence once again. Welcome to Speed Talk Live, which isn't really live, but a poorly produced podcast where we talk about NASCAR and all things racing. And occasionally we have a special guest or two, when we can get them to show up. Sit down, strap in, pull those belts tight. Speed Talk Live is on the air.
Pace car is in. Green flag, green flag, green flag.
All right, welcome everybody. Another week here at Speed Talk Live. I'm Greg Engel. As always, I got my buddy across the pond, the associate editor of CupScene.com, Owen Johnson. Hello, Owen. How are you, my friend?
Hello, Greg. I'm great. How about you?
Good. I hopefully you slugged through finals. Are you still doing finals, or is that
still got one more to go, but almost there.
All right. They do things different in England in school. You just got finals, and then you got your downtime. So you're coming back to the States next week, if I remember right.
Sometime next week, a little bit after, we'll see how that gets, but soon enough.
We'll get you back on the same continent. Anyway, so all right, let's talk about Darlington. One of my favorite tracks. I love going there. I'll be there in the fall. I was not at this race. It was Mother's Day, had a lot going on, so I did not go to this one. Of course, it was a great win. Brad Keselowski finally broke through. 3 years since Talladega 2021 was his last win. This was his first win since he became co-owner with Jack Roush over there, and now it's Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. It's good to see. And somebody pointed out this is the first time the number 6, which was last campaigned by Mark Martin, was in victory lane since 2011. But according to Keselowski, that really didn't mean much to him.
Yes and no. I'm not a huge numerology guy, but it's still a historic number in the sport. All the single-digit numbers, I think, in NASCAR kind of have this legend to them. So it's nice to get it back in victory lane. There's a lot of things to be excited about, so it's really hard to pick one over another, right? Whether it be just winning as a whole, winning at Darlington, winning and locking into the playoffs, winning with my family here, winning on Mother's Day. I don't know how to pick which one means the most, but they all mean a lot. I can tell you that. So it's good for Jack to have been here too. I'm sure I'm missing. Good for Ford, first win with the dark horse, and they've had a rough go the last few months. So there's a lot to be excited, a lot to like about it.
And obviously, Keselowski's win came at the expense of Owen's pick for the weekend, which was Chris Buescher. He wasn't happy, obviously, but Brad was asked if Buescher needed to be maybe change up his style a little bit, and not be the clean style kind of guy that he's been up until now.
Chris has his style, and it's worked really, really well for him. I don't think Chris needs to change a darn thing about what he does. It might not have worked out today, but there's other days where it works for him and makes him what he is. It makes him special, makes him good. I hated I didn't get the result out of it. I know he had some damage on the car, and that was holding him back a little bit. And so he wasn't able to drive away like you would assume a leader would do on a situation like that. But I thought he did a great job of putting himself in position, and to not get a result, I'm sure it's hard to stomach. And it should be hard to stomach. That's what you want out of your driver, right? You want him to be upset when he doesn't win. I would say, Chris isn't sitting in front of me now, but I would tell him, just keep being Chris. Keep doing what you do.
One thing I liked was Buescher pushing his teammate and sticking behind Keselowski as he battled with Reddick instead of taking runs himself, until he got such a big run that he had to take it and then got the lead. But for a while, for a couple of laps, he was sticking behind Keselowski, pushed him really hard to try to get around Reddick at one point. And I think that really shows the strong team organization that Roush Fenway Keselowski has become. And I think it shows how well they work together when they are up front. I think Daytona last year, for instance, when Buescher won, the two Fords are up front together. And I think it's a lot of teamwork at that team right now.
Yeah, and Reddick took the blame. He hit the wall, popped the tire, takes himself out. He can live with that. He said it's just tough to walk away knowing I used someone up and took their chance away of winning the race. Boucher confronted him on pit road after the race, and now everybody's trying to make up a rivalry, which I don't think is going to happen. I think Reddick was truly apologetic and truly felt bad about what happened, but there was Brad Keselowski finally in victory lane, which it was great to see, and it was a great win. The other things that happened in that Ryan Blaney was a 3-wide sandwich and squeezed into the wall on lap 129 right after a restart, coming out of turn 2. And when he came out of the pits, they thought they had repaired the car. He was on the DVP clock, and he came in. They thought they'd repaired the car. He went out, came out of the pits, and swerved up towards William Byron, who was a part of that. And everybody thought, oh, he's trying to take him out. Blaney could only make one lap and had to go back to the garage and was done for the day. He later did admit that he wasn't trying to hit Byron. Something broke. I don't know whether to believe that or not. But he did say, I'm not going to hit him. I'll save that for another time. So there could be a rivalry there. Maybe not so much with Boucher and Reddick, but with Blaney and Byron. We'll have to see that. See if Willie B can stand up to Blaney. Another thing, Kyle Larson late in that going late in the race had a flat late in the going, spun to the wall, broke his toe link. He was scored with a DNF. And now, of course, we have to bring up the fact that Ford has finally won this season.
Well,
right?
we've talked about it, I think, for the past couple of weeks, just because it's been so significant. One of the longest winless streaks for the Blue Oval, not just in the Cup Series, but in every series of NASCAR this season. But they finally won. They're still yet to win in the Xfinity or Truck Series, but at least Ford has something. And if the last 2 seasons are any indication, Ford may well figure it out now and go on to win the championship like they have the last 2 seasons. So see what we get. But it's good for Ford to break through. They were very, very close, a thousandth of a second last week, and now they got it.
Yeah, finally. And now we're halfway through the regular season. And it's curious. I wonder now that the doors opened if we're going to see Keselowski winning again, and how Boucher, Keselowski, and all the Fords are going to perform for the rest of the season. And we're halfway, like I mentioned, into the regular season. I got to get used to that because I'm still used to, not having a regular season. It was always just the season. And I guess it's more the vernacular now where you have the 26 race season. We're halfway through that. Now coming into the All-Star break. And really the takeaway so far, I don't like to prognosticate on the first half of a season and try to predict what's going to happen in the last half of the season, especially with the next gen car. Now we have so much parity going on. Who knows? I mean, Hendrick's been strong in the first part of this regular season. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be strong in the second half. They probably will be. It's going to be interesting to see JGR. We also haven't heard anything from 2311 and Trackhouse. So it's going to be curious to see how they step up as we get towards the playoffs and we start jockeying for the playoffs and get to that point where we set the playoff field. So I don't like to make, like I said, predictions based on the first half of the season, but I'll tell you, it has been a hell of a season so far with the finishes at Vegas, with the finishes at Atlanta, and obviously Kansas. It has been a fantastic season. I am totally fired up to see, no matter who wins and who steps up to the plate, I am fired up to see what we can have going forward.
Absolutely. And I think one thing just to focus on, just when you talk about Hendrick and Gibbs, is I think compared to some of the past years of the next gen car, obviously the next gen has really come into its own this year. Crazy finishes, great racing throughout the field for most of the races. But there's been, I think, a degree more dominance than we've seen with the next gen in the first 2 years, with Hendrick and Gibbs very consistently up front. Some of the other teams, Penske struggling, 2311 you mentioned. Obviously, Roush Fenway Keselowski was able to just break through, but I think there's been perhaps a little bit of a return to form for the top 2 teams like we've seen very recently going back the past decade in NASCAR with just a couple of really good teams.
And another thing, as I get older, time starts going by faster. It seems like we were just at Daytona, and man, we're halfway through the regular season, which is not the normal season that I'm used to. But man, it seems to be going by really quick. We got the All-Star race this weekend. And then we'll be at the Coke 600, which is going to be incredible. Looking forward to that. Another 1.5-mile track, but we're going to talk about that later. Let's kind of shift gears now as we look forward. I talked to one of my favorite guys of all time. And everybody thinks that all my guys are favorite guys, but they are. Ryan Vargas. He's 23 years old. He's a social media master. He first came on my radar because he hustles to get sponsors, and he's always putting together 1-race deals, 2-race deals. He'll have crypto one week and another sponsor another week. A hemp manufacturer. It's just amazing what this kid can do. And again, he's great on social media and stuff. Got an article coming out on Forbes about the fact that he's moved his racing, and he's competing his first full-time season in NASCAR in the Euro NASCAR series. So he's over there. He's going to Italy this week. I got a chance to talk to him while he was home, because he does commute back and forth, because there's only 13 races in the Euro NASCAR season. So he's not racing every week like here in NASCAR, but it is a full-time season. He's got sponsorship for the full season. Really happy for this guy. So here's my conversation with Ryan Vargas. All right, I am here talking to one of my not only favorite all-time drivers, but one of my favorite all-time people. I'm glad to have him. Glad to have could spend a few minutes with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the one, the only, the incomparable Ryan Vargas. Hello, Ryan. How are you?
I'm good. Always good to talk to you, Greg. It's been a long time no see.
Yeah, I know. The last time I was talking to you, one of the many things I like about you is the way you can get sponsorship, and you get these sponsors. You become like this marketing guru. Other drivers, they just go service their sponsors, right? You went out and actively hustled for them and got them, and great. Your life is kind of taking a little turn now, pun intended, because not only you're going left. But you're going left and right now in the Euro series, doing that full time. Catch us up to how the decision came about to head overseas and to race in that series, what I'm assuming is full time.
Yeah, I looked at everything going into this year, and I talked to my partners over at Critical Path Security, Patrick, Virginia, Brian over there, and all those amazing folks. They've been a massive, massive supporter of mine for the last 2 years, and this year, obviously, in a bigger way. But we really looked at everything that we were doing, and we just kind of realized, like, this Euro Series deal makes sense for what we want to do. This aligns with the goals that we want to set out, If we put everything together and really looked at it, it really showed that, I could do another year of part-time Xfinity truck, whatever it may be, and do the same song and dance for the fifth, sixth straight year. Or I could completely change it up, go run full-time internationally, and be competitive overseas and try entirely new things. And I think that right there is so incredible, so exciting for myself as a young driver. Being 23, I get to travel the world and try all these amazing, amazing things. It was a no-brainer when we really put it all together and started talking about it.
Is there a little less stress involved? Because I mean, when you're running part-time and you're running part-time in Xfinity and trucks, you have to put those deals together, right? And you may not have a deal beyond, June or whatever, and you got to work on that. And here you're going into this race, and yeah, you're good for this race, but you got to think ahead to the next ones. And I know that when you're at a race, you're always talking up and trying to look forward to that next one. Does this give you kind of a little less stress knowing where you'll be at and what you'll be doing for the entire season?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot less stress in that regard. I still have, some sponsorship packages to fill and stuff like that. But other than that, it's a really comforting feeling to know what you're doing, right? It's comforting to go out and be able to sit here and say, all right, I know where my next races are. You know what I mean? It's not a week to week basis anymore. It's, continuously trying to build up that program. And, I was just talking with the folks at Critical Path today, trying to find new ways to kind of integrate them a little bit more and try and see how I can help them as much as I can, as well as see how we can bounce off each other and, build everything up. So, I'm very thankful to be in this position with, Critical Path Security, with what they've done for myself and, for the team, for everybody. but also just, to be able to compete in NASCAR, but do so internationally. I think that's really, really cool. I think the series is an absolute blast to compete in. And I cannot wait to get back to Italy next week.
So when you approached Critical Path, your sponsor, and told them you wanted to do this European deal, did it take much convincing on your part, or were they pretty much all in to begin with?
At first there was a bit of hesitancy just because, it's an entirely different thing. We're talking, apples to oranges here in terms of, the type of racing that we're looking at. But, when we laid it all out and we looked at, hey, here's everything that comes along with it. Here's, everything that goes into this. They came back to me and they, were like, Ryan, this makes sense. Let's go ahead and try it. Try it this one
Nice.
time and see how it goes. We go to Germany last year, Osserschleben, and the weekend went phenomenally. Had 2 top 10 runs right off the bat.
Yep.
Really good. Had a lot of pace. Wound up running the finale over in Zolder. Had some really good pace. It ended up raining in the race, and that's something that I need to work on, is racing in the rain, but still ended up, I think, with like an 11th place or something like that. So still an okay day there. But just knowing that, like, there's the pace there, going to Spain this most recent race, and being as fast as we were despite being caught up in an incident, you know what I mean? Like, I think that we have the pace to go up there and compete for top fives, have that shot at a podium, an outside shot at, if things go our way, maybe a win. But it's just exciting to know that there's all this possibility out here. And it's just been such a blast.
What's it like servicing a sponsor when you're in Europe? I mean, I know, you've got the typical stuff here, on a race weekend, and you got to go say hi to this, is there some similarities, or is it totally different when you're servicing a sponsor overseas than it is in America?
Yeah, I mean, there's less, in-person stuff, right? Like, I know the folks at Critical Path, they're going to go to some races this year, but for the most part, they're not going to be at all of them. So that's a bit different, not being able to talk to them, while things are happening, while I'm at the track, or if have them be there. But usually they're up, they're always up when the race is happening. So usually about a little bit after the race is ended, I'll shoot them a call and we'll have a nice little talk about the race and everything. And they're always super excited about that. So it's always a blast to it's always really cool to be able to talk to them and hear their excitement about racing in the Euro Series. They love all about the campaign. They love everything to do with it. They've had so much fun seeing the race car racing on these European racing circuits, and it's really a dream come true to be able to go and race internationally like that.
What, for American fans who've never tuned into the Euro NASCAR series, what are the biggest differences that they would see watching a Euro NASCAR race as opposed to something here in the States?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, the cars are different. You know what I mean? They're, old school. A lot of people compare them to like TA2 cars, Trans Am. A lot of people say that they're very similar to that in terms of appearance and how they drive. I can't speak to how they drive because I've never driven a TA2. But, they are road racing stock cars. They are stock cars that are purpose built to go race on road courses. And the racing is phenomenal. You know what I mean? There's a lot of comers and goers. The field is very dense with talent. There's a lot of very, very, very talented individuals in the series, and I'm just fortunate to be amongst them. I'm fortunate enough to race against them, and on a lot of occasions be able to keep up with them, and on some occasions be able to pass them. So it's really cool to be out there in the mix of that, and I hope a lot of people take away from hearing about the Euro Series is at least checking it out. It's a lot of it's very exciting to see how NASCAR racing plays out on these European race circuits.
So let's pivot to this, because we've talked, you and we've exchanged emails, and I'm a big fan. I watched this series, No Days Off.
Yep.
It's an original series that's on YouTube. Really cool. And obviously, I learned a couple things. Obviously with your cranial syncytosis, been many years since I've been to medical school.
All good.
And I know that you have almost embraced that, because I didn't realize that the scars that you have are you incorporate into your helmets. That was a cool little fact I found out watching this series. And obviously how much you, like any other driver, works on your cognitive function and staying in shape. The fact that these cars are really kind of metal coffins, so to speak. And you're kind of jammed into them. I'm struck by the fact that I believe that every NASCAR driver, with very few exceptions, and you're not one of these exceptions. Every driver that's there, again, with less than 1%, has the talent to be there. So when you're working on one, here stateside, not necessarily in the European, but when you're working stateside and with JD Motorsports, who's an underfunded team, or somebody like that, I don't think people realize that you are working just as hard as, say, a William Byron or a Kyle Larson or a Bubba Wallace. You're working just as hard behind the scenes on your cognitive functions, on your staying in shape, on the pit practice. Tell me a typical schedule for you during a week when whether you're racing or not.
Yeah, I mean, my typical schedule, usually goes as such. I wake up in the morning. First thing I do is go to the gym, work out with Hunter over at Fit Stop Performance. Spend about an hour 15 there. Really just focusing, like you mentioned, working on the cognitive function, but also making sure that I'm physically prepared to handle being in a race car. Then what I'll do is I'll come home, kind of get ready for the rest of my day, handle some meetings, take some phone calls, send some emails, whatever it may be, just trying to make sure that I'm very in tune with what's going on the business side, especially with some of the ventures that I have going on coming up. It's a very exciting time, to say the least. Throughout the day, I'll just kind of be, monitoring all that stuff online. Then I'll probably hop on iRacing, run some practice or something like that. Head over and use my buddy Howie DiSavino, fellow racer. He has one of those little sauna boxes at his place. I'll use his thing to kind of work on my heat training. I try and do that as much as possible. Come home sometime around 6 o'clock, and that's when I kind of just hang out for the rest of the night, focusing on iRacing, running, whether it's fun races or actual practice races. I'll hop on the computer and just spend a couple hours on here, and then in bed by 10 o'clock at night, and start it all over again tomorrow.
And part of the thing I learned about No Days Off, when you talk about your sim, you got a pretty cool sim rig, man. And they show that there, and I know you get on it and do that. And I think people, and I'm talking at team owners right now. If you're getting not just a driver, because you've got the talent again to be there, and maybe not the equipment that could help you show that full talent. And that's no dig at JD Motorsports or some of the folks you've raced at. Their hearts in it. But you are like the hustle guy. You've always got something going on. You're always on the business, your social media. Some of these other drivers could learn from you this social media stuff. And I think that's an advantage, that you have over other drivers. When you look at everything, it's the same plane, right? This driver has the same talent as this driver, and you have that same talent. I think that puts you a cut above the rest. All that to say this, you're competing full time in Euro NASCAR. Could this be what's the future beyond that look like for you?
For me, I just want to continue driving race cars. If it's Xfinity, whether it's trucks, whether it's Cup, whether it's Euro NASCAR, whether it's GT racing, IMSA, sports cars, monster trucks, I don't care. I just want to drive stuff for a living. And I'm very fortunate to have amazing people behind me who have supported me into this, and who currently support me now. Their names on my hat right now. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many incredible folks who get behind what I do, and believe in what I do. And I just try my absolute best to make them proud, to fulfill everything that I set out to do, but also be able to exceed those expectations. And one thing that I also say, and you mentioned it right there too, is like, for every one Ryan Vargas, there's 1,000 other people that want that exact same spot that I'm in, right? So, what makes Ryan Vargas different? And that's just kind of what I gotta know that every day. I have to say, what makes me different? Why do I deserve to be here? So, it's a very challenging career path. It's nothing about my career has been conventional by any means. Most people do the normal all the way up route, and it's easier said than done, especially especially when you have the funding. But with all the amazing partners who have allowed me to stay in race cars, be able to do the things that I'm able to do, it's moved my career forward in ways that I never could have imagined.
Well, you know what? You can count me among one of your supporters, Ryan.
Appreciate it.
I've always been that. That's why when the folks reached out about this, there's no brainer. Sometimes you got to pitch stuff, and say,
Yeah.
"Come on, you should cover this story." All I got to do is mention your name, and I'm there, pal.
Appreciate
So, and I think you're right. For one of you, there's 1,000 others, and you don't take that for granted. I know
No.
that because you're a great guy, you're a humble guy. I want you to do well in Euro NASCAR. I didn't start watching the stuff until you got into it. So I wish you the best of luck, my friend. I want you to be successful. My God, you're only 23 years old. You got your whole life ahead of you. Who knows what's going to happen? And you're going to get the attention of somebody. You're going to be in the right place at the right time. And they're going to see. And not only are they getting a great, talented, very talented driver, they're getting somebody who's overcome some adversity. And they're also getting somebody who can go out there and hustle and make the deals happen. So I do wish you the best of luck. And when's your next race? Is what, in Spain or Germany?
Italy. That is
Italy.
next weekend. Yeah, heading over to Italy. Vallelunga, right by Rome. So it's gonna be a very fun trip heading over to Rome and checking out another brand new race circuit to me.
So there's the Benny. There's another Benny for you, right?
Yep.
Instead of going to Darlington or Richmond, you're going to frickin' Italy, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
Ryan,
I
thank
love
you,
it.
my friend. I appreciate it. Have fun over there in Italy.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Just rant and rave like you do to the TV during sport.
Since 2015, Darlington Raceway has transformed its races into a nostalgic reverie with throwback weekends, where the paint schemes harken back to the golden era of NASCAR and legendary drivers emerge from the shadows of yesteryear. It's all a grand nod to the sport's illustrious history. But this past Sunday, the homage took a rather unfortunate detour into literal territory. In recent times, NASCAR has revved up its engines and delivered an amazing on-track spectacle, especially since the advent of the next-gen car in the Cup Series. It's all been thrilling and left us with fantastic memories and highlights enough to last a lifetime. It seems, however, at least this weekend, Darlington didn't quite get the memo. Sunday's race was a less of an adrenaline-fueled dash and more of a tedious trundle. Passing was as rare as a Ferrari in a supermarket parking lot, and the action was as thin as the excuses of a driver caught speeding on pit road. The supposed edge-of-your-seat battles, now typical everywhere, were nowhere to be found. Oh, sure, there was a flicker of excitement when Brad Keselowski and Tyler Reddick engaged in a late race scuffle that epitomized the promise of the next-gen car. Keselowski's teammate, Chris Buescher, even gave his boss a shove in a daring bid for the lead. When that maneuver didn't pan out, Buescher darted to the inside on the front stretch, seizing the lead like a man possessed by Satan. But then, in a dramatic twist befitting a soap opera, Buescher and Reddick decided to acquaint themselves with the wall, coming at a turn 4 with less than 10 laps to go. Keselowski would go on to a popular win. Buescher was left wondering what the hell had just happened again, and Reddick sheepishly apologized. That drama saved the race. You see, the truth is, people always seem to judge a race by its finish, and that's fine. But we sometimes ignore how we got to that point. Beyond the finish, the race on the 1.366-mile track was a snooze fest, echoing the challenges next-gen cars have faced on shorter circuits. It didn't just fail to live up to the season's thrilling standards, like the nail-biting finish we witnessed the previous Sunday at Kansas. It felt like a throwback to the days when NASCAR races were endless parades with scant overtaking, both at the front and back in the pack. Clean Air was the undisputed monarch, and once a driver secured the lead, overtaking was as likely as me taking a vow of silence. Perhaps we've raised our expectations too high with this season's spectacular racing and heart-stopping finishes. Or maybe NASCAR still has a bit of tinkering to do on certain tracks. Honoring NASCAR's storied past is a brilliant idea, and dedicating a whole weekend to that history is nothing short of magnificent. However, the throwback should stop at the racing. Instead, we need to see the future of NASCAR, as was brilliantly showcased at Kansas, to be on full throttle at all times.
I have to say, though, I was impressed with the broadcast. I feel like we could see all the battles throughout the race and even further back in the pack, which is probably partially a result of the limited action up front, admittedly, but it's always good to get a spotlight on drivers. We don't get to see that often. Justin Haley, for instance, was really impressive, getting Rick Ware Racing their first ever top 10 finish on a non-super speedway track. And it wasn't just a caution fest at the end, that was on pure speed. It might not have been the most interesting next gen race of the season. And there weren't even that many strategy calls to enliven it, but it was, I think, a really good coverage and a really good spotlight for some of the throwback schemes, especially, which is always fun to see.
And sadly, part of that, I think, just my opinion, going back to what I was ranting about, there was not a lot for most of that race going on up front. So I think TV had a chance to really focus deeper in the field, and that's what happened. Maybe we saw that, and we got a taste of what it could be like if they did focus more on the back of the field rather than what's going on up front. So yeah, I agree with you. There wasn't a lot, but it was still a good race. And the finish, like I mentioned, the finish really makes the entire race. We tend to forget about the stuff that was going on before that. So, but there was something that happened post race that didn't get a lot of attention.
I think it definitely deserved not to get much attention. We shouldn't be highlighting this too much, but I am going to talk about it. And that is, don't climb the fence on an active racetrack. That's not just not smart. And you're not only hurting yourself, because if you do it and you get hurt, NASCAR will have to take steps and safety measures that could mean other fans besides you don't get the chance to stand up near the fences, which would be a shame. Don't climb the fence, though. You're going to get hurt. And I think it was great that the TV broadcast, Clint talked about it for a second, Clint Boyer talked about it for a second, but they didn't cover it. They didn't give it too much attention, and we should not be doing things like that or encouraging things like that at all.
Yeah, and I remember a couple years ago at your home track of Richmond, when we had a fan actually climb up on the fence during the race, they had to throw a caution. Gosh, I remember that. That was a mess. And you're right. People, stay off the damn fence. It's not that hard. I know people were happy to see Brad Keselowski win, but for God's sake, stay off the fence. You're just going to ruin it for everybody else. You know, it's like when I was in the Army, one guy, and we're all doing push-ups because one guy was a screw up. It's the same way. So yeah, stay off the fence, people. Just enjoy the race. That's all you need to do, and celebrate and be happy and drink, and don't drink and drive. So NASCAR announced Monday a new twist on next season's races with a TNT Sports portion of the 2025 Cup season schedule. Going to have an in-season bracket style tournament. And I'm not going to sit here and explain this because it's kind of complicated. You can go see it on cupscene.com if you want. And there should be enough news about out there with it. But Prime Video is going to be involved. By the way, we were told today from Amazon, it's Prime Video. It's not Amazon Prime Video. It's Prime, whatever. You know, when you're going to pay me, this is why I don't mention sponsor. If you're going to pay me, I will mention a sponsor. But if you're not going to pay me, I don't give a crap. I'll call it, you know, I'm still used to Amazon Primes. Anyway, Prime Video will be part of this. It was Hamlin's idea, Denny Hamlin's idea. He did his own last year. He's going to do it again this year. So obviously he's taking credit for it. Look, the winner of this tournament is going to get $1 million. Most top drivers in the sport, considering, you know, their personal service contracts and their sponsorship money and all that, are kind of like, yeah, isn't that nice? You know, $1 million is like $100 to you and me. It's not, you know, not that it's not important. It is important, but I don't think $1 million, you know, make it 5 million, make it something meaningful. And then, you know, I think it's going to get them a little more motivated. Not that I don't think they won't be motivated. They will be motivated. Denny Hamlin talked about how, I forget who it was. I think it was him and, might have been Reddick, that they were, you know, ready to move on Hamlin's, rundown on his contest last year, that they kind of raced a little harder than they thought about it in the car. So if they know they got the attention on it now on TV, they may run it a little harder. So hey, if it gets more eyeballs on the sport, why not? And of course, this is, you know, these kind of contests and stuff are all, you know, there's something you're used to in your generation, right?
Absolutely. But anything to get eyeballs in the sport, like you say. And I really like it because not only will it get eyeballs in the sport, I think, but it will force the broadcast, like I talked about, to focus on battles throughout the field, which I always personally really enjoy. Maybe that means focusing on drivers who didn't qualify well, driving up through the field to try to beat whoever their bracket opponent is that week. Or maybe it's just a tough battle. Like there's always tough battles outside the top 20 that just don't get highlighted at all. Maybe we'll get to see some of those as the bracket challenge goes on and highlight some more drivers throughout the field, which to me is a win.
Yeah, I agree. So, you know, hey, good for him. We'll see. Denny Hamlin and his ego will be inconsolable between now and then, because NASCAR didn't acknowledge it, but I'm pretty sure that they got the idea from him and ran with it. So, we'll see. Of course, all of this, we don't know which races are going to be which, because the 2025 schedule isn't out yet. We're starting to get some hints of what's going to be where. We know when Daytona is going to be. And obviously Memorial Day weekend when Charlotte will be. So it's going to be dependent on that. We're not going back to LA is what we're hearing, which makes sense because they would have had to sign the contract with the LA Coliseum, and the LA Coliseum would have announced it by now. They didn't do that. So it looks like that experiment's ended, which is a shame. I loved it. It was great optics. We need to be in Southern California. So hopefully by next year, they'll have something going on at what used to be California Speedway, something out there in the LA area. I would like to see the Clash, and there's talk about it going to Bowman Gray Stadium, the Bounce House, and there's a couple reasons I like that. I think it'd make for some fantastic racing. It would be overflow stands. Plus, the bonus is it's in Winston-Salem, which is near where my family lives, so I don't have to worry about hotels and flights and all that. I just go hang out with the fam and see that. So we'll see how that works out. There's also talk of going to Mexico, which would be great. It sounds like they didn't get Canada ready in time, but looks like we'll be in Mexico next year. So we'll see that. Speaking of Amazon's Prime Video, go ahead and knock me down there, Amazon. They announced, NASCAR officials announced today that it'll be part of the new television rights agreement for 2025. They're going to kick off their race broadcasts, the Prime Video, with the Coca-Cola 600 over Memorial Day weekend. That means that one of the biggest races of the season, one of the crown jewels, is going to be the first NASCAR Cup race that fans will need to pay to stream. So how do I feel about that? You know what? 5 years ago, I would have been up in arms. I would have been walking up and down in front of Amazon's headquarters with a protest sign. But I think streaming, just like we were talking about the contest, is a different generation. I think with the streaming, it's typical. I don't see a problem with it. And I think it's time for this to start. And it's going to start with, this will be the last Coca-Cola 600 coming up next week. The last one could potentially be on network TV, and the rest is going to be streaming. I don't know. Do you think it's as big a deal, Owen?
I think it's definitely a big deal. And I think there's going to be some people who will resist it, who don't want any streaming services. Obviously, it is a higher upfront cost, considering especially that the Coke 600 would be over the air rather than cable. So there are some people who just won't be able to, which is unfortunate. But I think that really is where motorsport is going. We talked about Formula One last week with their subscription package. And I think one advantage that Formula One has with that package over NASCAR is that it's all in the same place. We're going to have 4 networks next year. It's going to be a bit of a mess to figure out the first year of that new deal. So I think the big advantage of Formula One embracing streaming so heavily is that you always know where to find a Formula One race if you want to stream it, whereas NASCAR, some streamed, some not. It's all a mix everywhere.
And it'll be interesting to see too if it's commercial free. If they do a commercial free race with the streaming, then yeah, take my money. Because I think that would be a great trade-off. I know Amazon now charges a different price for a little higher tier. I'm a huge Grand Tour fan. I used to work for Jeremy Clarkson when they on the website to support the Grand Tour. So I'm a huge Grand Tour fan. That's why I got Amazon Prime Video, was just for that. And it's well worth the money to me. I'm now knee deep in one of the few things I actually binge watch, which is Clarkson's Farm. Love that show. And had Zoom meetings with Jeremy Clarkson and all those guys. They would be in a pub in London and I'd be here and we'd have meetings, and it was great. So yeah, I'm all for it, but I know that the higher tier is commercial free, and then there's a tier where they put commercials every 20 minutes for 30 seconds. Even I can live with that. So we'll see. I mean, I don't want to knock it before we try it, kind of thing. Of course, obviously, I'll be there at the race, so who covers it on TV is not a big deal to me, as it is for the other races. So we'll see. Speaking of this year's uh, Coca-Cola 600, Jimmy Johnson. Now, this I didn't have this on my bingo card. Jimmy Johnson's going to be doing his own version of the double. Obviously, Kyle Larson is going to be doing the double with all 1,100 miles. He's going to race the Indy 500 and then come race the Coke 600. Jimmy Johnson is going to be at the Indy 500 as an analyst up in the broadcast booth with NBC. So he'll announce the Indy 500 and then he'll fly to Charlotte and drive the Coca-Cola 600 that night. He's also going to be in the NBC Sports booth for the Daytona Summer Race, the Talladega Fall Race, and the championship finale at Phoenix. So I like it, and I think it's great. I'm a huge Jimmy Johnson fan. We had him on the program a couple weeks ago, so good for him. I'll look forward to seeing his coverage for the Indy 500 and also the Indy and the coverage and later in the year. So we did have a test session there at Indy today, right?
We did. It got rained out though. So for Larson specifically, who I think my eyes are on more than anything, I think Scott Dixon was the fastest, which is not necessarily a surprise. But Larson was only able to turn 2 laps, so I don't think he really got a time on the board. So no real gauge of his speed. Last time he was out there was, I think it was the champion or the past runners test day, and he was second. But I doubt they were running in full qualifying trim then. So we'll get a good gauge of his speed in the upcoming month, but not anything yet.
See, here's the thing. I thought about this today. So they're running practice all week. So yes, it rained out today, but they've got an opportunity for the rest of the week. They're going to qualify this weekend. It's going to be 2 days of qualifying. And then they're going to into the next week where they'll have all the pageantry and then they'll race. And I thought, where have I heard that before? Well, you know what? That used to be Daytona Speed Weeks. Daytona, you would practice a couple times. You would qualify. Saturday, you would have the ARCA race. Sometimes you would have the Clash. Sometimes you would have a truck race or something like that. And then you would have, qualifying on Sunday. And then you would have practice during the week, the Thursday night, qualifying races. And then you would have the race. It was truly a speed weeks. Now it's a neutered version of itself. So I hear, IndyCar doing it, and I hope that NASCAR pays attention to that. And because I would like to see some more practice sessions at Daytona, some more goings on, so we can get back to more of a speed weeks rather than which has really become a speed day. I don't know if you remember those times.
I don't think I ever really got to see too much of those times. I saw the Clash at Daytona, but I think the one thing to focus on just a little bit different that is very much in NASCAR's favor is some of the IndyCar media we're talking about this week. A stat that I think 70% of the viewers who watch the Indy 500 do not watch another IndyCar race. So NASCAR at least has some more viewer retention throughout the season, I would like to think. And so I think that while IndyCar clearly needs their version of Speed Weeks because they're just not getting any eyes on the rest of their races, while NASCAR at least has the rest of the season, the regular season, the playoffs. I would certainly like to see Speed Weeks. I personally would like to see the Clash back at Daytona, and just have that whole week like we used to. But regardless, it's not quite as necessary as it is for IndyCar.
I remember working in the Daytona Speed Weeks, and literally you were over there all week, and you had to have a schedule to understand when cars and trucks were going to be on track and what was going on. And yeah, I miss those days, and I get it. There's some cost savings involved, and people's attention spans are a little shorter. But I still think it's a better way to open the season when you have more going on and you have 2 weekends involved rather than the like I said, the neutered thing you got. So anyway, All-Star race. Let's talk about the All-Star race. I will be there this weekend, North Wilkesboro Speedway. I cannot wait. I was there last year. The vibe was tremendous. Everything, everybody was happy. The people that live there, the residents, we're hugging you. I mean, it was just incredible to see. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't care who wins the race. I mean, it'll be a great race. There's new pavement. I think it'll be a Hendrick car. I don't think it'll be Kyle Larson. But there's new pavement, and we'll have the trucks on Saturday. I think I think they're going to lay a little rubber down. They got the Cars Tour coming into that. So I'm looking forward to that. It's got one of the best press boxes, and I never thought I'd say this. The press box at North Wilkesboro is an amazing sensory experience. And what I mean by that is most press boxes are up high, right? At the start finish line. In Darlington, it's in turn 3, but you're setting up high in a tower and you're in an air conditioned building and you've got, you've got the big windows. My favorite press box beyond North Wilkesboro is Daytona, which is new. I wish they get the Keurig back in there, but regardless. Also the parking for that is you park under the tower and you take an elevator. I mean, you're just kind of spoiled. North Wilkesboro is a tent. Okay. It's a cover that they put outside of turn 3 that they hang some monitors up there so you can see the timing and scoring and see highlights. But you are outside, you're feeling the vibe from the fans, you're getting the dust in your face. And they've got a table and they've got internet access and all the things you would have in a regular press box, but you cannot talk to each other. It is loud, it is in your face. The fans are screaming and yelling, and you're right out there in it. And let me tell you something, it is one of the most wonderful experiences I've ever had in racing, and I really, really can't wait to get back there. And I know, I temper my excitement because you're the one analyzing it, because, talking about one thing that's going to be different is Kevin Harvick is going to be there in place of Kyle Larson.
Yeah, so we talked about this when it was announced after Dover, but Kyle Larson obviously will be qualifying for the Indy 500 this upcoming weekend. So Kevin Harvick will be practicing and qualifying in the heat races on Saturday. But that means because he's not eligible for the race, he didn't win last year, that car will start from the back. Now, I definitely agree with some of the commenters we got when I said that, I don't love Harvick being in the car, maybe put a younger driver in. Harvick definitely is the most experienced driver, but he is ineligible, so that car is going to be starting from the back. So I wonder, firstly, how much information he's going to be able to give, considering that he and Larson don't necessarily have exactly the same driving style. He's been out of the car for a bit, and the new pavement is completely different. I wonder, personally, if you put one driver who notably is eligible from a win last year and is not going to be competing in the race, SVG, put him in the car and see if he can maybe make up any spots during the heat races. You never know. Cars could wreck. He could have a good performance, even though he's never been at the track, and maybe stand to gain a qualifying position better than the rear. We'll see how much data Kevin Harvick can actually give Kyle Larson, but I stand by. I think put the guy who's got the win in the car and see what he can do.
Yeah, SVG in the All-Star race. I think that'd be phenomenal, man. Let's make that happen. Let's start a petition. And before we sign off, I want to highlight the story that you did this week on Cup Scene about the designer for Greg Van Al's ARCA car at Charlotte. I thought that was a great story. It's still there. And talk about that story before we sign off.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of months ago, Greg Van Alst, who's an ARCA driver who drives for his own team, Greg Van Alst Racing, announced that or posted on Twitter, looking, I think, a little bit for a reaction, which is fair enough, that he used AI to design some schemes that he would send out to prospective sponsors. So he said he would design about 175 to 100 schemes, send those out to sponsors, and it would be a kind of a baseline, and then he would actually hire a designer from there. He got a lot of flack from that, from designers saying, you need to be paying designers. But for me, when I read that, I thought that's just impossible. You're doing 100 schemes. It's a small cell phone team. He then decided, based on that criticism from a lot of designers who said they wanted a chance to work for free and maybe design a car for him, that he would do a design contest. So he opened that up this weekend for Charlotte. And the winning design was just announced. The designer tweeted, "This is nuts. Never did I think I'd see my scheme hit the real world track," which is a great opportunity. But he got even more flack for that. A lot of chorus of, pay designers. I think you can't have it both ways, and you can see my article up on Cup Scene about the whole controversy and my thoughts on how we should embrace AI, I think, for some of these purposes, for how it makes, criticize the ARCA budgets all you want, but I don't think you can criticize him not being able to pay for 100 schemes to send out when only 5 of those maybe at best will be taken up. So I think it was a really interesting story, a lot of unwarranted criticism, and you can see both sides on cupscene.com.
Great work. Great work. I love the story, and you're spot on with your analysis of that. Will you have a preview this week?
We should have a preview up this weekend before probably on Thursday.
I'm gonna put that pressure on you. So because people love your preview. So look for that. Look for the ARCA story. Look for me if you're at North Wilkesboro. Come find me. I'll have swag. I'll be giving out swag and hugs and taking pics and all that. Owen, my friend, I appreciate it. Good luck on your final.
Thank you.
And we will look forward to seeing you back on this side of the continent next week or the week after when you get back. And I don't know if my technology will keep up with me next week in order to do a podcast. So we'll see. If so, great. If not, we'll talk to you after Charlotte when I get back here with the technology to catch up. But I'll have a bunch to talk about. We'll have a bunch to talk about. And I hope you have a bunch to talk about. I know I've gotten some comments and we've addressed it. I've changed shirts for those who ask. So comment, follow us, subscribe, keep safe. Peace out. We will talk to you next time. Thanks for listening to Speed Talk Live. For questions or just to tell us how bad our production is or to leave other feedback, leave us a comment below. For all the latest NASCAR news, visit www.cupscene.com. Until next time, peace out and let's go racing.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.